You wake up to a pounding on your door. Two burly guys in military police uniforms are outside, and in minutes you're in the back of a Humvee heading to who knows where. The draft is started, and Uncle Sam wants you. In today's episode of the Infographic Show, we'll look at what really happens to you if the US restarts the draft. It's 2025 and the war is raging across Europe, with Americans watching on nervously. The president has made the official announcement of his executive order to re-implement the draft. The 1.3 million active duty troops in the US and almost 770,000 National Guard and reserves just wasn't enough. You were already registered under the Selective Service System, or SSS, just like all American males aged 18 to 25 by law. You were well aware that if the president and Congress demanded, you could be asked to serve your country in a crisis. You just didn't think that it was actually going to happen. The draft is only for males, but there's been serious talk about new legislation under the National Defense Authorization Act. The polls are saying 61% of women and 59% of men support women being included. Before the draft was announced, almost 80% of Americans said the U.S. shouldn't even have a draft, including you. The next day, you receive an email from the draft board telling you what's going to happen next. The fact that you're supposed to be going to college doesn't get you out of this. Things have changed since the 2.2 million young American men were drafted between 1964 and 1973 to go to Vietnam. Things are now supposed to be much fairer. You can't defer if you're enrolled in college full-time, although they will let people finish the semester. What you do in the military will also largely depend on your educational background. So it's conceivable kids from very wealthy families might not be sent straight to the front, something people are already protesting against all over the country. You make an appointment for the pre-induction physical exam and are told what you need to bring and what's expected of you. On the day, you turn up at the military entrance processing station armed with all the documents: birth certificate, social security card, educational documents, and medical records. You don't have a serious underlying illness or a disability, but you're kinda on the heavy side. And after the pandemic, you were treated for depression and anxiety. You've heard lots of people don't meet the criteria for the draft for medical reasons. You're starting to wonder if those medical documents you brought with you mean you won't be going to Europe. This has become something of a problem for the military. The pickings have been getting slimmer and slimmer every year that passes. Between 2021 and 2022, there was a significant drop in the number of military applications. The Air Force Academy reported a 28% drop, and the Naval Academy a 20% drop. The Army reported it missed its recruitment goal by 25%, a trend that had started about a decade earlier. Around 150,000 people enlisted in the military in 2020, a 58% decrease from 1980 when almost 360,000 new people signed up. The number of applications over that period dropped 73%, from 768,000 to 205,000. Before the draft, the Pentagon said only about 9% of young adult Americans felt inclined to apply, but what was just as worrying was only 23% of young Americans met the physical requirements. It was 29% only as far back as 2016, and a massive 50% of young adults were considered fit for military service in 1970. At the processing station, you have to fill out a few forms, some of them about your health history. Then you get on the scales and you have your height measured. You don't qualify as obese according to your body mass index score, but you're certainly no John Rambo. They give you a vision test, and after that you strap on some headphones for a hearing test. They check your blood pressure, listen to your heart and lungs, and give your joints and muscles a quick going over just to make sure you're a fully functioning male. There's also a little bit of physical training, but it's nothing more than a few push-ups and sit-ups. You were expecting a 2-mile run, but it seems they've scrapped that part of the test. They stick a syringe in your arm and draw some blood, then they hand you a plastic cup and they tell you to fill it with pee. A 26-drug panel test will check for all kinds of drugs, including marijuana. Oops, you think? You're wondering if that blunt you smoked in the weekend will show up. But the blood test is mainly to check your liver function, kidney function, cholesterol levels, glucose levels, and to look for various serious diseases, infections, and anemia. The next part is a literacy, math skills, and reasoning abilities test. They already have your educational record, but the tests are designed with military-focused applications in mind. It's multiple choice and it covers arithmetic, general science, even has questions on electronics, automotive stuff, and verbal expression. Your score might dictate what you're going to do once you're deployed. You never know, you could end up working in military intelligence. Are you fluent in Russian? After this, you have your psychological and moral evaluation. Your military career is a non-starter if you've ever committed a serious crime. You'd be labeled 4F, unfit to serve. 25% to 33% of Americans have a criminal record. Around 19 million have a felony conviction. Minor crimes won't make you exempt. As you're going through all these tests, you can't help but notice that some of the people at the center are not exactly, in the physical sense, what you'd call soldier material. Some of them look too big to get in a plane, never mind jumping out of one. From 1971 to 1974, only about 14% of Americans were obese, and about 2% severely obese. 50 years later, the numbers are about 43% obese and 10% severely obese. Childhood obesity rates went from 5% in the early 70s to about 20% in the 2020s. The Department of Defense says obesity is one of the leading causes of people being turned away from the military. It's definitely a major issue, so they've introduced a new Future Soldier Preparatory course, a 90-day high-intensity training course. But this isn't boot camp, it's just regular fitness training. And even if someone is obese and they can't lose weight, they're being deployed into more sedentary roles. What about when you were treated for anxiety and depression? You know for a fact that quite a few of your friends take medicines for psychiatric issues. Can you or your pill-popping friends still be drafted? The DoD has rules about not accepting people who've been diagnosed with mental illness, usually within the last 36 months. Unfortunately, in 2025, that is a lot of young Americans, making a considerable dent in the draft numbers. Studies show that there were significant increases in young people suffering from anxiety, depression, and behavior problems in the 70s and 80s to the 2020s. There was a noticeable uptick in numbers from the 2000s to the 2010s. The problem is worse for young people, aka you. The U.S. Office of Population Affairs reported not too long ago that an estimated 49.5% of adolescents had a mental health disorder in their lives. In a recent study by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, it was found that 1 in 3 U.S. adults aged 18 to 25 had a mental illness in the past year. 1 in 10 had a serious mental illness, and then there's the 13.5% of young adults aged 18 to 25 with a substance use disorder. This will count some people out, but it's not an issue for you. Your diagnosis of depression and anxiety was made a few years ago. As for other young people with psychiatric ailments or substance abuse problems, the military is thinking about offering pre-basic training counseling services. It's another evolving issue that's very 2025. The military is having to get very creative. You don't really want to serve, but you've almost certainly passed the assessment with flying colors. As it turns out, you're a slightly overweight Gen Z G.I. Joe, but the hard part is still to come. You could of course have told a litany of lies in an attempt to get out of military service, but there'd be more evaluations, and making false claims, as you were told by a very stern officer, could have serious legal consequences. You go home and wait, and about 10 days later you receive a letter, the induction order. You're in. Marijuana was found in your blood, but it's not an issue. Getting high doesn't get you out of a trip to Europe. At an appeals board, you can still apply for an exemption, a postponement, or a deferment, but you'll have to show you have good reason. You heard about a guy down the street who was a conscientious objector, but he had to go through the process of proving he had a, quote, deeply held belief. This meant that his church submitted letters on his behalf, and he attended in-person hearings. He might now qualify for a 1O classification, non-combat service, and end up doing some kind of civilian job for the war effort, or get a 1AO classification, non-combatant military service, and still work within the military but maybe as an admin or a medic. Your next stop is to meet with a service enlistment counselor. Turns out your test scores were excellent. You might not be the fittest draftee, but according to those scores, you're one of the smartest. The counselor goes through various jobs that you could do and asks what you'd like to do. Doesn't mean you'll get what you want, but you might. It's not quite basic training time yet. You've still got to vow to defend the United States Constitution and obey the Uniform Code of Military Justice at the Military Induction Center, and then welcome to the United States military. You have every intention of going to basic training, but the doubts start to creep in when you see the news reports about U.S. casualties. Then you hear about your school friend Jim, who came home in a flag-draped coffin. Suddenly, war feels very real. Your doubts turn to fear. Fear makes you irrational, and irrational sends you off to your friend's house to hide out and play Call of Duty, which is much safer than the real thing. You are now AWOL, absent without leave, punishable under Article 86. If a month passes, you could be charged with desertion, punishable under Article 85. If you have a legitimate excuse, you might still be okay, but only if you hand yourself in quite quickly. Seems like a great plan until one of your friend's hyper-patriotic parents snitches on you. And that's when you get that knock at the door from the military police. You've committed a federal crime. You explain your anxiety problems and the fact that your friend was just killed, and To your surprise, you're shown some leniency. You're very lucky. You now have about 12 weeks of basic training and then another 8 of advanced training. If the war escalates, the training period can be expedited. If you fail it, you'll be sent in for adaptive training. No matter what happens, you're being sent to the front line. As you hunker down in a trench, bullets flying past your head, you think of the other guy you know from school, the one who left the country before his digital passport could be flagged. He's been away for months already. He recently posted a photo to Instagram with him on a beach in Thailand. #beachlife and #draftisslavery. He's now a fugitive and he faces a $250,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison. And there is no way he'll be shown leniency. He also faces losing his civil rights. Thailand has an extradition treaty with the US, but it's likely he won't be sent back. However, if a considerable number of Americans dodge the draft by skipping off to a certain country, then extradition deals could be worked out. Global travel and remote work are so much more available in 2025 than in the 60s that draftees leaving the country has become a major issue for the US government. The guy on the beach is now blacklisted from various online services. Big tech might start working with the government, so there's a chance he won't be able to use digital wallets or cloud services. He'll be flagged if he looks for work with American companies. Companies can be fined for hiring him. It hasn't happened yet, but the government is also considering freezing the bank assets of draft evaders and putting them on no-fly lists. Make no mistake, if your government needs you, you will have to answer the call. Now you need to watch If NATO Went to War with China Day by Day, or have a look at If Russia Went to War with the USA Day by Day.